Hey, this local leaders podcast you're about to hear with Woody Overton, creator and host of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, is brought to you in part by Southern Oaks Title. From contract to close, Southern Oaks Title can take the stress out of your next closing. Give them a call at 769-5032 for your next commercial or residential closing. Southern Oaks Title. Close with someone who cares. Now get ready, because we're about to get real with the wolf himself, Woody Overton. Thank you so much for being here. I'm a really big fan, and this is actually an honor for me.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Glad to have you here. We're going to talk about your book. We're going to talk about where the podcast idea all kind of formed and came from, and anything else you want to tell me. So with that, welcome, Woody Overton.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So the way I discovered your podcast was we have a mutual friend, Lori Goolsby.
Yeah.
And
she's a force of nature.
Yeah, she's a force of nature. She put on Facebook at one point, check out this podcast. I think it was the first one that you did, Double Clutch.
Yeah.
Okay, so she said, check that out. And I want to circle back to all that. But before I do, I want to kind of get into your life before it went haywire with podcasting.
Right.
You have just an unbelievable life for such a young guy.
Yeah.
So I did my due diligence and kind of checked out what I could check out. I read your book and all those sorts of things. So I want to cover all of that. Like I was telling you before the podcast, we're going to kind of segment it out. So I'm going to talk about your early life a little bit first. And I do want to say that this segment is brought to you by LeAnn's Flooring by Design, conveniently located on Florida Boulevard, Denham Springs. LeAnn can service all your flooring needs. Give them a call for an appointment at 523-7004. LeAnn's Flooring by Design. They stand by everything you walk on.
Excellent.
So you are from Clinton originally, is that correct?
That's correct. 5-6 generations Overtons from Clinton.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a beautiful, beautiful place over there. And tell us a little bit about like your family, your mom and dad.
Both of them were trial lawyers. My mother was the first woman ever inducted into LSU's Law School Hall of Fame. My father practiced law for over 48 years. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was a judge in East Feliciana Parish till he died. And my mom's dad was the longest running district attorney in the state for East and West Feliciana for over 30 something years. He's deceased now also, but all my brothers and sisters are lawyers.
Wow.
The whole family, aunts, you name it, they're all lawyers.
I just can't imagine where your passion for the law came from.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable, and I didn't know that. So lawyers. So from an early age, you were pretty much able to kind of diagnose, looking at people and reading them and things like that. Lawyers have to do that, and of course, you discuss on your podcast with your experience in law enforcement, how it's been a great value that you can just read people.
Right. And
so I can see where that comes from. A lot of that, I believe that a lot of that we're kind of born with.
Right.
So that's amazing. I had no idea both of them were lawyers. I did read or I heard you mention one time that your mother was a lawyer. So that's pretty interesting. So you went to Silliman Institute?
Silliman.
Okay.
Silliman. I graduated in 1988.
1988. Class of 88.
Many years ago.
Awesome. And what did you do after that?
Right out, straight into the military. Well, actually, Louisiana National Guard. And then college. And then I started with the Department of Corrections. it's just been a plethora of things since then.
So let's back up and let's talk about you. Okay, so you enlisted in the Army National Guard?
That's correct.
And what did you do for them?
I was a nuclear, biological, chemical warfare specialist.
I hope all of y'all caught that. That means he's smart.
Yeah, that's actually, the recruiter, I went and took the test, and I wanted to be an MP. And this is a true story. And they came back and said, no, you scored too high. We had this field we want you to go to. And he sold me the song and dance and got me excited about it. But I just really wanted to be an MP.
And for the record, I've never taken a test where someone's told me I have scored too high. It must be nice. So I'm glad you, I wanted to ask you this personally. So you have a little experience there with warfare when it comes to biological agents and stuff like that getting put out. COVID right now is a big thing, and obviously. So I'm not that I'm a big conspiracy theorist, but I do believe that this is something that could have possibly been released as a form of not nuclear warfare, but biological warfare, putting something out there. If you want to hurt the United States, this is my opinion, you hurt them economically. And so that was something that China, I don't know if they did or not. I mean, I'm a podcaster and a paint salesman, but looking outside in, is that something you would put past another country?
I know the U.S. policy on it was that we would never use biological because it couldn't be controlled. We would use chemical only if it was used upon us first, and sure, we would use nuclear at will. Now, like the chemical, some of the lasting agents, say blister agent, it's not meant to kill your soldier. It's meant when your soldiers come through, everywhere they get a drop on it, it forms huge blisters until the blisters pop, and then run and cause more blisters. What it's meant to do is incapacitate your medical teams, your doctors, and slow down your troops. And COVID, what's it doing to our medical systems and the government? And they can't control it. They don't know it. And like you said, it shuts down the economy. So, but do I mean, it's obvious that it came out of China, right? So,
yeah.
But I know the Chinese are dealing with it themselves. And I know that's from my wife was teaching Chinese kids online at school, and they've been locked in their houses. I mean, they can't even go outside. They get their food delivered, et cetera. So if you're going to do that, why do it on young people? But then again, Saddam Hussein tested chemical warfare agents on his own people. So who knows?
Very true. And I would never, of course, when we're discussing this, it's strictly from a governmental perspective. It would never be the people of China or anything like that. And nor would I think that. But I'll tell you one thing that got my wheels turning on it was, a lot of people don't know this, but we'll use World War II as an example, go way back. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. So people who haven't studied a lot of history assume that was because of World War II and it was just a war and they just sneak attacked us. And while they did sneak attack us, there was a reason for that. And the reason for that was we were sanctioning them. Basically, we wouldn't sell them oil. And we were the largest exporter in those days of oil, would not sell it to them. And they had to basically pass through our Pacific fleet in order to get to Venezuela.
I'm a huge history buff.
Yeah. So you know the story.
Well, I do know the story.
And ever since that time, you never want to put things past another government to do. And I've had friends that they were in the military, they left the military, and then they went into to contract work, and there are things I'm sure that go on that none of us know about, and things like that. But I want to get your perspective on that, because that's something that you kind of specialized in, and
I don't know if their intentions, if they did it and their intentions were to mess us up, then they succeeded.
Yeah, they really did. And so you served your time there, and thank you for your service on that. What would you say was your biggest takeaway from serving in the military?
I guess leadership. I made sergeant at 19 years old. I graduated primary leadership development course, but I was teaching. But my NBC NCO, I was teaching officers and leaders how to use their equipment and do the different things so they go back and teach their troops. Nobody took it serious until the first Gulf War, when Saddam was firing the Scud missiles, and we didn't know if they had chemical agents attached to them or not, right?
Right.
But I guess the leadership, I've always been in a leadership position, and the discipline and leadership.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, I'm sure, throughout your life as we progress here, that you probably reached for often. I find that same thing as well. Leadership is a huge aspect of that. Us as professionals, we lean on that a lot. Everybody, I've said this a lot. People are not cookie cutters, and a good leader can kind of differentiate how to treat different people.
Right, smart enough to know where you're weak and bring out the best in your
That's
people.
Exactly right. Yeah. So we get out of the military, and we'll go into the next segment here. This is segment 3, we'll call this, and it's brought to you by Rhino Electric. Rhino Electric can handle all your electrical needs, commercial or residential, so give them a call. Woody at 324-3851. Rhino Electric, charging your electrical needs without shocking your wallet. I love that little tagline for them. So, Woody, you head on to law enforcement at some point. This is your kind of what you're known for on your podcast, is your law enforcement side of your life. Tell us what kind of led you into law enforcement.
I guess I was such a bad guy when I was young. Not just teasing. Yeah. I don't know. The criminal mind's always fascinated me, and it really has. And when I started in corrections, it just blew me away. Yeah. And I loved it. I mean, that's all I ever wanted to do. You know. Yeah. Fight the bad guy.
Yeah, and especially growing up with parents that were heavy deep into the law. I mean, I'm sure that was a influence for you and all those sorts of things. It's funny. I'm so glad you did when you did your first podcast and talked about some of your prison life as a guard at Angola, I believe was that episode.
Trained at Angola, but it was stationed at Dixon Correctional.
Yeah, Dixon. Okay, so I like those episodes, and it's funny from a podcast listener perspective. There's something for everybody, I guess you could say, and there's some of them that love when you get down and deep and dirty with the murder stories and the investigative stories from your time at the sheriff's office. And there's some that want to hear that those guard stories and the crazy stuff that happens in prison.
A lot of people like the funny stuff, and but I always said law enforcement, and this is true, is the greatest show on earth, or it used to be. And there were so many days, and I'd get off of work where I felt like I should have to pay them for the privilege of working there because I had so much fun with it.
No kidding.
And
that's
just awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Yeah, my wife, just a little side note on prisons. My wife is a x-ray tech at Women's Hospital. So she does the mobile mammography. So they go and they do mammograms all over the state of Louisiana. And one of the places she goes is the women's prison. And you met her in passing one time, but my wife is an unbelievable individual. Yeah, everybody loves her. She's a talker. Imagine that. We get along in that respect. But my wife will sit there and communicate with the prisoners and, so what are you in for? And they love her to death. And so it's funny because she would come home they do this like once a month. They go there and she would come home and I'd be like, so what happened today? Tell me those stories. So it's mind-boggling almost to me how interesting that stuff is. especially in, like you say, law enforcement. And I'm sure it changes every day and all those sorts of things. And there's so many stories you can tell. So you became a prison guard first, and you know, you at some point you ended up at the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office. You were recruited by Willie Graves, I believe.
Well, it was an accident, actually. Was at Southeastern PD, and I'd just taken a job with NOPD. They'd gone through the hiring process, et cetera. But I had my own private eye business on my days off, and I had all cops that worked for me because, you know, we worked 2 on, 2 off, 3 on, 2 off.
Yeah.
So the days I was working, I had other cops from different departments, my friends, working in my PI business.
Sure.
And one of them was Adam Rice, and he worked for Willie. And he kept saying, man, you got to come meet Willie Graves. I said, dude, I'm not going to Livingston Parish. You know, Livingston Parish was the butt of the jokes, everything back then. They had nothing. And but on the last, I was just getting ready to report to NOPD. And Adam said, you need to meet, just come over. I was at his house. He said, come to the courthouse with me. We just want you to meet Willie. And I walked in, and he kept me in there, just him and I, almost an hour. And before I left, he offered me the job, and I took it because I read him, and I just knew it was where I was meant to be. Yeah. And that's honest God true. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I've met him a couple times as well. And he is
a real true leader of men. I can tell you that.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. I wanted to ask you, you know, so observing strong leaders, learning from strong leaders, this is as important as any other aspect of any business, whether it's law enforcement or sales or running a newspaper, whatever. I'm fortunate, you know, in my B&I group, for example, I'm in a networking group. There's a lady named Tricia Johnston. Tricia Johnston is a realtor for Ladder and Blue Realty. So Tricia is, in my opinion, someone that is just a born leader, because she doesn't ever have to say anything about her being a leader. It's the way she carries herself and the way she takes care of her clients. And there's a reflection there to the amount of houses that she sells, those sorts of things. So those are the type of people I want to learn from. And I would imagine when you started at the sheriff's department, that was a person that was of great benefit to you, just watching them,
right?
You know, observing how they led.
What's so crazy about it is coming in to Livingston Parish, not being from here. I knew no one who worked at the office except for Brian Paul Smith, who's now the chief criminal deputy. He and I went to the academy together at LSU. Okay. And to come in and not know anyone put me at somewhat of an advantage because I didn't play politics. I just arrest everybody indiscriminately. And Willie took care of it. He needed to, right? Or district attorney did. I'm talking about, I didn't know the family names, all the big names, et cetera. I just arrested them all. It didn't matter to me. But I always try, even at corrections and the military or whatever, I always like to watch other people work and try to glean the best things that they do and adapt them to my own, right? And so I did that through whether it was uniform patrol, corrections, detectives, polygraph, whatever, and especially in interview and interrogation, which I'm not conceited, just convinced that that's what I'm the best at.
Yeah.
But I got there by picking little things. Love to watch other people work and adapt their best techniques, maybe, or whatever. Choose the best from them and go with it like that. I don't know how to.
I know exactly what you're saying, and I almost tell people the exact same thing. What I say to people is, I am a observer of people by nature. So I will observe, and I tell them I'm sponging off you. I will see things that I can take and use to help me in my life, whether it's leadership or whatever. And I'll use that. I'll learn from that. It's an innate ability, I think, for that leaders possess, because inside we know we're leaders, but we're not so arrogant that we don't think we can't learn.
Sure,
we can
absolutely.
learn from anybody.
Absolutely. And I think that, not even quantifying it as a leader, I think I just want to be the best. If Woody Overton's name was going on it, I wanted to be the best, right? I wanted to be to go above and beyond what everybody else did and go the extra mile. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly.
Do the best that I could do. That's the way my daddy raised me.
That's right.
The work ethic, and as I got older, and then being in the leadership positions, even in the private sector, et cetera, I find that nobody will do it. Nobody will do it as well as you'll do it, or as I would do it. You know what I mean? They won't put the whole. You expect that you this, and then they'll get to a certain point. And I'm like, in my mind, it's not their fault. It's me being a perfectionist. I'm like, oh, can you go just a little bit further? Yeah.
Yeah, I've right, and I can relate to that 100%. I've been told more than once that my biggest weakness in leadership is my ability to delegate. What I struggle with, and it sounds like what you're also talking about, is if I have a customer, for example, or a client that I'm taking care of, I have an issue with taking care of them to the point that I run myself ragged. And the reason I do that is because I'm putting my name on that.
Right. My name goes on. I want to.
Yeah, exactly. And it's learning to trust other people to handle my business. That has always been a fight for me. But you know what? If that's the weakness that I have to deal with, I can handle it. That's fine. So I want to talk about another interesting thing about you is you were the very first person certified to perform lie detection in Livingston Parish, the first one for the sheriff's office. Okay, so you went to a pretty prestigious school for that. Tell us about that.
I did. I went to the, it's actually the Department of Defense school, but I went to the Texas State Police. It was a Texas State Police headquarters, and you have to be a senior law enforcement official to even get accepted to the school. It's hard to get in it, but the only other it teaches the Department of Defense curriculum, and it's so secretive that you don't have books or whatever. It's all done by PowerPoint, what have you. But it's DODPI is what they used to call it, Department of Defense Polygraph Institute. And I don't know what they changed the name of it now, but that was a tough school.
Yeah.
Tough deal.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I'll tell you a little experience I had with a lie detector at one point. I wasn't going to tell this story, but I'm going to tell it now because it's comfortable. So, many years ago, because I work in retail, we were having an issue with some theft. I was managing a store for my company, and somebody was stealing. We couldn't figure out who it was. The issue we were running into was because everybody had access to that register, let's say. Everybody had a lie detect. You couldn't cherry pick.
1988 Employee Polygraph Detection Act. Everybody that has access to it the owner all the way down has access to it. Has to be tested.
Yes. So back in those days, I was 28 at the time, maybe 27. I was like, fine, I ain't doing nothing. No problem. And they did. The interesting thing is usually when you spring that, somebody's going to quit. And that's 99% of the time the one, and they're going to stomp up and down and they're going to say it's because if you think I would do something like that and, you got your guy. Well, in this situation, no one quit. So we were like, we all got to take a freaking lie detector now. So the lady comes and she hooks me up. And, I didn't do anything, but I was nervous. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to fail this freaking. I can't calm myself down. I mean, it was weird. They had you hooked up and she sat me down and she's trying to find that I guess medium or whatever you would call it, where my heart rate and all that was matching up. And she would talk to me, just try to calm me down. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. And she started the test. I took the test, passed the test. We ended up catching the guy that failed it. Now, fast forward to today. I'm like, if I was in that same situation, would I? And here, you did an episode that I listened to where you specifically spoke of false positive. That was the name of it, I believe. And that's what got my wheels turning. And I'm like, if that woman wouldn't have been a good polygraph examiner, I mean, she could have screwed up and I could have failed that sucker.
Good and bad in every profession. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not taking a polygraph.
Yeah.
I can tell you that not because I don't believe in it, but because you don't know who the examiner is, etc.
Your entire fate is on the person across from you being good at it.
But you know what? Even the examiner is only as good as the information they're given. And I had to learn, and I learned lessons through my younger career, like on the episodes you're talking about, false positive. When you get it, that license, everybody wants to use you up, etc. And then they want to start using it in place of a good investigation. You just go do your job, and you don't even have to have the polygraph. But just a lot of things to work it out on it. But there's a reason. It is admissible in court if both sides agree to the expert testimony. I've actually testified in civil cases and in some grand juries and stuff like that. But that's so rare that that's ever going to happen. That both sides are going to agree, because naturally it's an adversarial situation at some point. But yeah, the polygraph is an excellent interrogation, break somebody down tool if you know how to do it. It's an art form.
It seems, and this lady was good. She, I don't remember her name, but she was very obviously knew what she was doing and all those things. My question is and we'll go back to your law enforcement days. Say you had someone in there and you're sure they did it. You know they did it. You just want to get the polygraph kind of as the padding, and you sit them down and you polygraph them and they pass it. And I know that's probably never happened, but if it did, does that really throw you off their trail, or is it
actually has happened at the? Well, I can't say that they beat it. The countermeasures, a countermeasure is a deliberate attempt on the part of the examinee to do just something to alter the outcome of the test. And there's three types: mental, physical, and narcotics. Most examiners are not trained in that. If they are, they have like an hour's worth, right? In the federal program, you're trained in that. And I've actually been to advanced anti-countermeasure schools. So all the stuff they have on the internet, all the websites, they have them, how to beat the polygraph, how to steam the polygraph, antipolygraph.org, the websites. They have a lot of true and correct testing information. But the one thing they don't tell you is using the countermeasure never makes the guilty person look innocent. All it does is messes up the charts and makes them where they can't be scored, and you get a result of inconclusive. I don't do inconclusive. To me, you either did it, you didn't do it, or it's a no opinion if I bust you using countermeasures. But I'm going to tell you something. You talk about cases like that, and it just reminded me of another story. I had to do it on a podcast one day where I just knew the person did it, et cetera, and it came in and passed the polygraph. But it actually wasn't because they beat me. It was actually because I was wrong on my preconceived notion that they were guilty.
Oh,
they ended up being innocent.
Yeah. So, yeah. That was and you told on that same episode that I'm speaking of,
right?
You had discussed I think it was the FBI or somebody had come in and they were just convinced about this.
And and what I didn't know at the time as a rookie examiner, I hounded her on that one question that they saying she didn't press the extended time lock, and I'm telling you, and she's like, no, I did. I did, but it ended up FBI got it wrong. But the only question she failed was the participation, and that's because I hounded her so hard on that ahead of time, saying the FBI said you didn't. So she was really worried about that question, but she still passed. Did you participate, or did you not participate? Did you tell them how to rob the bank, whatever it was.
Right.
She passed the really serious questions, but she went deception indicated on that one question, but it was because I kept messing with her. And in her mind, she was thinking, maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't, right? And
almost getting paranoid.
So, and she was a true victim. Yeah. I mean, it really happened to her.
Yeah, and that's an amazing episode. I highly recommend people go back and listen to that one. It's full of twists and turns, I can tell you. So you also had a reputation. You were being someone that could really go out there and just chase the dope as it were. Yeah. So is this something that you just specialized at and you were just good at? They called you the wolf.
Yeah. It's back to reading people. What I didn't like to do was write tickets, right? But I stopped more people in uniform patrol. I would stop more people every night than probably everybody else on the whole shift combined. But I was hunting. When my regular calls, in between calls, I wanted to go catch the dopers or the people with the warrants, et cetera. And so that's what I did. But it goes back to, I get you out of the car. I knew within the first 30 seconds of talking to you if I had you or not, right?
Yeah.
And I just knew. And reading people, right? And then, so yeah, that's, it was fun. I mean,
Sure.
Like Ernest Hemingway says, certainly there's no hunt, no thrill like the hunting of armed men and men who've done that long enough, soon care for a little else, however it goes. And that's what it was. I'm a big hunter, right? And deer hunting or whatever, but this is hunting potentially armed people, but adversarial, bad guys. And,
that's amazing. And I'll tell you one thing that especially with everything going on right now with the police and all this stupid stuff, and I'm not going to hesitate to say that I'm a huge supporter of the police. And I think these people are idiots that are doing what they're doing to our law enforcement, insinuating that you want to defund the police. Are you kidding me?
Right. And they said defund them and said, but what are you doing a 911 call on a domestic? Oh, we'll send out a counselor.
Yeah.
More cops get killed every year responding to domestic violence calls than all the other calls combined. If it's a narcotics call, we'll send out a narcotics counselor. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, and here's what I believe, Woody. There's two kind of people in this world. There's people that run towards danger, and there's people that run away from it. And there's people that if it's their family, they're going to defend their family. I'll use you and I'll use my wife as two examples. Both of you are people that would run towards danger. And what I mean by that is if somebody needs your help, you're there. I am not a big fan of like seeing blood and stuff like that. I'm just not built that way. It bothers me. It's something that I don't like to see. We had Leadership Livingston, which is Livingston Parish Chamber of Commerce sponsors. A lot of the local leaders here have went through it. I'd love for you to. But this program, the Sheriff's Department participates in this as well. They have we have a day where we go to the Sheriff's Department and all this. Now, this year with COVID, we had to do all this online. So it was like over Zoom. But they played like a 911 call was one thing, and it was a lady, and unfortunately she had got shot, killed, and she called, and it was the whole call, and man, it freaking disturbed me, bothered me for days, and what it really did more than anything else was I already had a ton of respect for the police, but I'm like, man, that's how you can go and put yourself in danger for someone you don't even know is some pretty strong shit. And excuse my French, you might bleep that out, but it really is something that not everybody can do. Somebody messes with my kids, somebody messes with my wife. I see an old lady on the street getting her purse snatched. I'm going to handle that situation, but I might hesitate. I might step for a second and think. You're not thinking. My wife's not thinking. My wife will, if somebody's hurt and their head's half cut off, she's going to go there and try to render first aid. I'll do that, but I might kind of, do I want to see this? Your episodes and you have a warning before them. This is, basically saying this is not for everybody. This is, but it's the truth. And that's what I like about it. And I love the episodes. I'm just glad I don't have to see that, in person.
Go back to the narcotics. When I was out there hustling every night, I wasn't just drawing a paycheck. I wasn't what we call a rod, retired on duty, just going from call to call and doing my minimum amount. So I was out there hunting. And remember, I didn't know anybody in Livingston Parish, but I made the name for myself. Then I didn't lose my cases because I brought correct all my motion suppressors and probable cause hearings, et cetera. So I guess I caught Willie's eye, and then I made detective in like a year and a half, which was I would beat out people who'd been here forever.
Right.
And then, but there was no narcotics spot at the time. And when I made detectives and I worked my first homicide, then I realized the dope wasn't as important. And to me, I wanted to go after the real good. I didn't want to keep arresting the same dopers over and over again. I wanted to put people in prison that were going to be in prison after I retired, right, or die in prison.
Yeah.
Put them away so they couldn't hurt other people.
I get it.
Yeah.
And the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office has something on their badge. It doesn't say protect and serve. It says something else. Is that there's some sort of is something about a Bible book?
Yeah, Jason changed that after he became sheriff, and I'm not familiar with what it is, but I've seen it. I just hadn't looked it up. I know, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't either. It's something like we are the protectors of people or something. I don't know. So whoever knows, comment underneath here and tell us. I know Lance Landry knows because he's the one that told me. So yeah, which I have a lot of respect for that, because that was something that I found very, very interesting and kind of limited to the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office, that as far as I know anyway. So getting back to that point, it takes special human beings to do that. Do you remember working your first homicide? Like, were you nervous that, man, what the heck happened here? And
well, I actually had been out on a couple homicides. Of course, the uniform guys going to be the first ones to respond, right? And uniform patrol and all the suicides and everything else. But I don't really remember which was my first homicide. I just know that it's too many to remember, and I can't remember which one, but I know there's no greater satisfaction than especially figuring out a case that nobody else can figure out, right? And then taking that case and especially like cold case, taking that case and putting this person in prison for the rest of their life, right?
Yeah,
that's priceless to me.
It's probably like a Drew Brees running out.
It's funny. It just popped in my head. I started in Texas. I remember. I probably still have it. I started a plaque. I called my 20-plus year club. Everybody I got sentenced to more than 20 years because I knew I was going to be retired. But after like the first 5 or 6, I was like, man, there's no way I can keep up with this thing. Threw it away. Awesome. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that in probably 20 years. So.
Yeah.
But 20-plus club. Yeah.
A lot of people before your podcast didn't realize all that was involved in those cases. What makes you really good, and we're going to get more into this when we finally get into your podcasting part of life, but is your innate ability to paint a picture for the listener to the point they almost feel like they're there. You are gifted at that. That is probably the hardest part of what we do as podcasters. But you're a storyteller. I'm an interviewer. There's a big difference between us, and the way you tell a story, man, is to be admired. It's unbelievable.
I just go with I have a photographic memory, and so I don't use any notes or anything like that. And so when I tell the story, I'm describing what I'm seeing in my head.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and I wish I had that. I'm envious. So you at some point you ended up at the state police. How did that occur?
The state police had asked me to come as a criminal investigator too, which at that time was the highest ranking investigator they had, and there were only 3 other ones in the state. And I was like, no way. I knew I had chief of detectives at the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office had a state, and the second time, one of my buddies, Lane Barnum, who's I think just retired, as a colonel, but he's from north of Denham. Anyway, he and I used to date cousins way back together today with some Denham Springs girls too. But he called, and he was captain of internal affairs, and he said the colonel, is coming to Denham. Let's take you to lunch. I'm like, because I already turned them down.
Right.
And then I went to lunch with them, and they just, you know, maybe an offer I couldn't refuse. They took all my previous state time, at corrections time, my university PD time, all those. It made where I had 7 years till I could retire. Plus, my salary was more than double. And he said there'll be, you know, you'll have your own office, no more nights or weekends, no more call outs, no more. I mean, it just took everything. And maybe an offer I couldn't refuse. But he did ask me, I'll never forget it, right down here at that restaurant by the railroad tracks. And he said, the colonel said, Woody, how come you never want to be a trooper? I said, I don't want to hurt your feelings. And he said, no, just tell me. I said, because you do the 3 things I hate the worst. And he said, what? I said, accidents, tickets, and DWIs. You know, I don't like working accidents because they take up, you know, it's too much paperwork.
Yeah.
Tickets, I just didn't do them. If you were such a butthole to me that I had to write you a ticket, now I'll stop more people than anybody else. If you were such an ass to me that I had to write you a ticket, I just took you to jail for it. And then the DWIs, what always happened during PHT, prime hunting time, right? Between like 9:30 p.m. and 3:30 a.m. in the morning. That's why I'm out there doing my hunting. But I had all the troopers on speed dial. I'd stop them. And I stopped 100 drunks a night probably. I called the local trooper and said, hey, I got you a 98 over here. Come to get them. And because for a misdemeanor, I mean, I'm not making light of DWIs, but I didn't want to get bogged down in the paperwork. So they made me that offer. And, I started in between a lieutenant and a captain's pay, with state police and in 7 years till I retire, and I'm retired. So,
wow. Yeah, I can imagine. And DWIs are probably just a ton of, and then you're dealing with people just trash. There ain't nothing.
Yeah. And,
I'm fine.
Well, you got to get them off. And then you got to get a tow truck and you do the test and you bring them back. You have to observe them for so long before you put them on the machine. I think I did 3 in my entire career. And the first one's a mystery. They might have 12 DWIs on the record, but if they weren't, Boykanized in each district was what they call it. They only get charged with the first or the second. And I was like, let the troopers handle that. That's what they do. So anyway, troopers, they don't know shit about investigating.
Yeah.
And they don't, other than crashes and stuff. And so that's what I went over and what I did. So
amazing. So you do your state police stuff, and how long were you with them?
From 2007 to the end of 2013.
Okay, and I know something occurred in between all of that time, and we're going to get into that. And for that segment, Stephanie Berthelot and the crew at SR Enterprise can handle all your painting needs, Woody, and your sheetrock or texture. Give Stephanie a call at 504-432-9284. SR Enterprise, they spread the paint, but you spread the word. So, I know, I like that one too. Such good taglines today.
And all these after the flood.
I'm telling you, look, trust me, it was on fire after the flood. Woody, you write books in addition to all this stuff that you do. And I'm a book fan to begin with. Did you write a book called Prophecy of Honor? That is you. That's a fantasy book.
I wrote that for my kids, or my tweens or whatever, way back then.
Okay.
Yeah, I always was and still am a voracious reader. And when other kids were, building stuff and doing with tools, I was reading books.
Yeah.
And I always liked to write. I've written so much stuff that I never published or did anything with. I just like to write. I guess it goes back to storytelling.
Yeah, it really does. What you're doing now is writing. It's just coming out of your mouth instead of on a piece of paper. But you did write Prophecy of Honor. It's kind of like a fantasy series book. Were you a Dungeons and Dragons fan?
I was.
Were you really? I played it too. D&D, man, back in the day.
But then I couldn't find enough other kids to play with me.
Yeah, you got to have like 4 or 5 people. And I played with a bunch of hoodlums back in the day, and they would always do crazy stuff Jim, you're dead or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, we digress. So you also wrote a book called Jesus Help Me. And that is the book that I had the pleasure of listening to. I call it reading. Most people call it listening to. Great. You narrated it yourself.
I actually did the published version first. Okay. And then after I got in the podcast of people talking about the voice. And so that's when I went back and narrated it for Audible.
I got you. And let me tell you, an amazing book. Kudos to you for, we just talked about this a minute ago, but your ability to of descriptive storytelling is unbelievable. I'll give you an example. There's a part of that book. I'm not going to tell you too much of it, listeners. You're gonna have to download it, but trust me, worth the download. There's a part of that book where you discuss Aladdin, and you're apparently allergic to it, or it does crazy stuff to you. Sure. I found out at the wrong time. So they are injecting you. You're in a lot of pain, and of course, you're describing this like fire just going through your body.
I'm just crawling every inch all the way through me and ripping up muscles and everything all the way down to my toes. And I had sandals on laying on the table in the yard, my toes even locked up.
Yeah. And that's exactly how he describes it in the book. And I'll tell you, his descriptive storytelling is so good. I can almost feel it, man. I can almost feel that. But you discuss your faith in that book a little bit, and who knows? People may be surprised you're a man of faith.
Absolutely, a lot of people are surprised about that. But look, just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean I'm a pacifist, right?
That's right.
And, hey, I'm not trying to preach to anybody. I'm the biggest sinner probably in the whole parish, but I love Jesus. I love Jesus.
Oh, that Woody.
But I don't have a religion. I have a relationship.
That's an excellent way to put that, and I can agree and confer with that. It's the book itself is kind of centered around your relationship with God, but also near-death experience that you had personally, and your ability to overcome that. And you talk about your wife in there a little bit, Cindy. You ever sit like I do, and you sit back and you think, I'm lucky to have a chick like that.
Punted way outside of my coverage with this one.
I'm telling you, man, it's strong men typically have strong women around them. Successful men typically have. How much has Cindy meant to you in your life?
Everything. She was the one that finally got Woody Overton and then took me for who I was and supported me through thick and thin, good times and bad, legitimate, right? And she's my partner, man. Yeah. She's now. You want to talk about the grease that makes everything run? She's it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. That's I can relate, and us as guys, of course, we're studs, and of course they're going to like us and all these sorts of things, but everybody has aspects of their personality that maybe it can be abrasive, or maybe I know you're the same way as me. I'm sure we both look back every day and we're like, man, I'm so lucky that person's there. And we were talking before this podcast about all the things Cindy does for you in this podcast. And so good job, Miss Cindy, if you're listening over there.
Wouldn't be any real life real crime without Cindy Overton. Of course, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today without her either. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I may not either. And I'll have to tell some stories about that. But, you do many other endeavors beyond being an author, working for the state police, working for the sheriff's department, all these amazing things you've done in your life. And one of the things you do is private investigator work, or you did do at some point.
I did. I started that in my early 20s, and I kind of broke the mold on it because back then you go to the PI school and graduate and start your own business. So what I did back then is I went, the Yellow Pages were still out. So I took out the biggest ad in the Yellow Pages, and I cut everybody else's rates in half. And I advertised on a little local cable television channel. You remember the one?
Oh, yeah.
The screens would swap. And
yep. It was like Channel 9 or something back in the day. Yeah.
Investigations. And then all the old timers that were on the board, hell, I was killing their business. Now they changed the law. When you get out of PI school, you have to do so many years of internship and be sponsored, et cetera. Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. Those were fun times.
That's interesting. Yeah. And I would imagine it was a lot of my husband's cheating on me, following me around kind of thing.
Custody cases. That's what. Actually, I did a lot of insurance fraud, and I had a bunch of crazy things. New businesses, Visa and MasterCard would pay me to go out and actually certify that they were new businesses, and
you could do a whole new podcast just on that.
I hadn't thought about that in 20 years. Yeah.
Golly, what a life. Yeah, that's I've always kind of been intrigued by private investigator work because you're typically trying to catch people in something.
But after I retired, I got into defense consulting, and then I got certified as an expert in all United States federal courts as an expert witness in law enforcement matters, right? Which is not that many of us in the United States that do that. And so I got started in defense consulting almost by accident. I went in to do a polygraph for a defense attorney. The client was innocent, but there was a young defense attorney who's not young anymore, and he's one of the best. But I told him, I said, "This case is wrong, dude." I said, "You missed this, this, and this from a cop standpoint. Sure. And they did this wrong, da 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 da." And that kind of morphed into his own career, and it took me nationwide.
Wow.
A
lot of travel.
A lot of travel. I actually had to have an apartment in Dallas at one point. Just crazy. I've been crazy blessed. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's man.
I never knew what God was going to give me next, man. And I still don't.
Yeah, look, you are rocking and rolling. That's a good transition into what you do right now, which is you are an extremely popular podcast host of your own show, Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. And my first question on that is, how did the concept come into play? It seems so obvious now. How did you not think of this 10 years ago?
Absolute accident. And Cindy hates when I say that, but it was a year ago. So I guess 2018's hunting season. I always could stay at my cabin and stuff, and then Cindy keeps the fort down at home, and I can work from up there, right? If I have to travel, I bring my clothes and I can go catch a plane from New Orleans or wherever, So meanwhile, I'm hunting, and it was a bad weekend, hot, et cetera. And I said, you know what? Well, I'm going to take you to the coast weekends. We can have some alone time and go to the Boberfires, right? And on the way over there, she said, we're driving through the parish like always. I passed somewhere and I said, I work such and such there. She said, you know what? You need to start a podcast. And I said, what the hell is a podcast? I didn't know. Yeah. I really didn't know. And she said, but people tell stories. And then I'm like, what? And so we started listening to some of the true crime ones on the top ones in the world. On the way over there, I'm like, this is boring. I mean, these people are reading scripts and stuff they've researched off the internet. She said, everybody likes your voice. You got a million stories. Just trust me. And let's do a podcast. So I said, I'll tell them a story. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have started out with Double Clutch because it's such a hard one to hear, right? But at the end of it, the justification is this guy's been getting away with it for over 20 years, and I got him 4 life sentences in less than 15 minutes. So but in retrospect, I mean, you could go look at my numbers when people come to see, they hear the first episode. And then they don't click through to the rest of it because like, oh shit, I can't hear that. Yeah. But
I'll give you my opinion on that. And as a listener, as someone from the other side, to me, it was probably one of the best moves you made. You're right. If you can get through Double Clutch, you can get through probably anything else you have to say. But that being said, it's probably stirred up more heat, I guess they would call it in the wrestling business, stirred up more heat for you and your podcast right from Jump Street, man.
It's get viral. It was great.
Unbelievable episode, and but heat is warning. Heat is warning on it.
Let's do it now. I apologize about the audio. We didn't know what we didn't know.
That's right.
I was just telling the story. And my wife edited that. I mean, we knew nothing, and she had to learn how to edit and take out my lip smacks and ums, and I mean, of course, her equipment has improved and everything else, but it seems like so long ago now. But it's only been a year and a half.
Yeah, it took off that fast.
2.2 million downloads this week's what we passed, and we were at 1 million in February.
That's unbelievable. That is it's unbelievable, but I get it, and I'll tell you why. You have made all the right moves on your podcast. Okay, so you have the perfect logo for what you do. It's black and red. You have kind of your podcast itself is not dark, but your subject matter can be considered a little bit darker than, maybe what I talk about on an everyday basis on my podcast. Let's talk about your intro. So, Toby Tomplay, and you had an intro before his that I also liked a lot.
The first one I did, I said I want something soulsy and bluesy with a prison theme, because you know what I mean. And a lot of people, not a lot, but some people said it was racist. Well, I found that old prison song, Chain Gang prison song, one of the Sugar and Coffee Law that makes me mean, but it moved me, right? And that's just like the emblem. When I'm looking for something like that, I get it. And if it moves me, then I use it. I guess it translates to other people liking it or hating it. That one. And then, I loved it. And then the kind of a copyright thing, an issue that on that song. And so then I had my son and his friend. I said, you know what? I'm gonna hit him with a cop siren, and it played that. I just read the Miranda rights. It wasn't on for that long, maybe one season. But then Tomplay reached out. I didn't know this guy. They were fans of the show, and he said, "I'm going to write a song for you." He said, "Can you say the Miranda rights and record it for me?" Whatever. I'm like, all right, whatever. I did it, and like 2 days later, he hit it, and I was like, "Man, this is fire!"
Fire. It is an intro that once you hear it about 3 times, it is stuck in your head forever. I walk around the backyard, and I might be painting a piece of furniture, and the whole time in my head, whoa.
And I didn't realize how big that it was with the fans until we did the crew bash. When I came out on the stage, and right before going on stage, Toby says, "You're gonna read the warning while I play the music." I'm like, "What? I'm not prepared for this," but of course I did it. But the fans were saying it just as loud as I was.
Dude, the roof went off the place.
Crazy, man. That was wild.
Look, let me.
Our lifers are the lifers, the fans are the best.
It was unreal. Okay, so from another podcaster's perspective, so I told you that, Lori posted that link. I clicked on the link, listened to the episode. First thing I did, I said, I got to tell my wife about this. Now, my wife is all into the blood and guts and gory kind of stuff. She's she can't get enough of it. I tease her all the time. I say, the only reason you're not a doctor is because you married me. And I figured out I got to wife up this girl or husband up this or whatever you call it before she figures out that I'm not a doctor and goes and finds one. So that being said, I'm gonna kind of sidebar to this. There's an episode where you talk about an autopsy, and you say there's a sound, and you say that sound. They go around and excuse us for talking about this. Can't handle it, but hey, it's real life, real crime day today. There's funny story. Dating my wife, I don't know how many years ago, 23 years ago now, and she's telling me, they're in school and they have to kind of like witness these autopsies. She says there's this really cool sound it makes when they pop that cranium off.
I said that there's no other sound like it.
And I said, what does it sound like? She says like I don't know how she did it, popped her lips or something. And fast forward to that episode, and you said the exact same thing. And I said, that chick was serious. But the whole time she's telling me that, I'm like, don't know if I want to date her anymore, man. This chick's weird. Yeah. But she was hammering that point. It's this sound you wouldn't believe it. It's the cool. She described it as a cool sound, but anyway, I thought that was interesting.
The suction of the skull separating over the brain. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But it's a certain.
It's just that sound.
Pop it off.
I guess whatever, y'all can have that.
It's the blood and guts. I don't do, and that's the other thing. There's a lot of podcasts. The true crime genre is pretty much the biggest genre in the world for podcast listeners, and there's a lot of them that sensationalize the blood and guts and stuff like that. I have never ever sensationalized anything. I'm only telling you what I saw,
and
I keep out. I don't tell. All my best stories are yet to come. My biggest cases, the worst murders and stuff. But I'm waiting so I can get access to files so I can make it more in depth and all. But I don't. It's not sensationalized. It's just the truth.
Well, what separates you from a lot of those folks? You're first person, Woody. You were there in a lot of these cases. The people that aren't, they're basically telling us. They're reading out of a book. You're not. You're there, and so you don't have to sensationalize. And I think that's what people love about you more than anything else is you're genuine. You don't sugarcoat it, but you don't give them more information than they need to have. And as you just said, sensationalize something. And honestly, with your stories, they don't have to be. They're good enough just the way they are. I mean, as far as that goes. So your interaction with fans is off the chain. You almost, at the times I've seen from your Facebook, which congratulations on well over 20,000 members. It's insane and not surprising, but these lifers, as you call them, are really supportive of you and your podcast. Another great idea in branding is the fact that you call them lifers. I mean, man, all those things are just, when I say you made all the right moves to call your fans lifers, your 30-second podcast, but how important are these lifers to your success?
They're everything. Like that private crew page, a forensic psychologist from Alaska, right after I dropped Double Clutch, she said, you need to messaged me out of the blue, said, you need to start your own private group so you won't get censored on Facebook. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. She actually started it for me. She was my original Dream Team moderator. That's why I call my moderators the Dream Team. Yep. And they did it, and lifers, it's a play on words naturally, right? But, lifers, people I put away for life. That's why I was thinking in my head, but lifers you down. Yeah. We'll ride for life, whatever. You can look at it a bunch of different ways. But when the Advocate did that article on this, and they labeled my fans a cult, that went nationwide. The AP picked it up, and so podcast has a cult following, right? And then they were joking, and now we're a cult. I was like, it is what it is. That's it. They're fanatics, I can tell you that. Yeah. And I love them, every one of them. I really, really do.
And they definitely are. And that circles us back to that live event that you had. I attended that live event. I went to my wife first. I said, you got to listen to this guy's podcast, man. It's good. And the cool thing is, he worked for the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office. We know these cases. And so she did. The next day, she texted me, OMG, that was freaking awesome, or something like that. And she, we started catching up at that point with all your episodes that you had put at that point. And found out you were having a live. And I said, I'm going to go to this. I'm going to check this out, see what this guy's all about. So we went. Everything about that live was perfect. You had the small table with chairs, and it wasn't over the top as far as it was just enough to, it was almost like a little detective scene. It was crazy. Had the big real life, real crime banner in the background. we got a great picture in front of that, and I took one by itself that I'm going to kind of splice into this episode. But, you know, I stayed for the whole thing. It was so packed at the end that people were shoulder to shoulder. No COVID at that time, thankfully. People were shoulder to shoulder. Both stories of this place. And what happens? Toby Tom Play comes out. They start playing the theme. And here comes Woody Overton. And he says, you have the right to remain silent. And when I tell you the roof blew off that building, it blew off. And you're exactly right. Everybody started saying the Miranda rights. Dude, these people are here listening to you do a podcast. It's unbelievable.
We were the first people to ever sell out that place, and the only person that's sold it out since is Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, no kidding. Shout out to Snoop Dogg.
The owner told us, he said, "You got to quit selling tickets, man. It's going to be too many people in here." And so we did. But
you had all your real life, real crime, the podcast, logoed merchandise there. It was set up really nice. You had a lot of help. I know Lori was there helping. We actually, she works with Dr. Doug at Strickland Dental, and my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, worked with her for many years. She's a dental hygienist, but now she's in Mississippi, and that's a whole nother story. But totally impressive. Now, COVID hit, and you had an event scheduled where,
if you want to show tour scheduled, we had House of Blues was going to be the first one in New Orleans, and they got canceled for whatever reason, but it would have been, right? House of Blues tickets were sold out. Then Alexandria, Louisiana, then coming back the next day to Killian at 10 Lizzie's on the river.
Yeah.
Then we had Dallas, Texas, Houston, back to Baton Rouge for the Texas Club with Chase Tyler, which got canceled, and then then Chicago. All the venues booked, man, and people want to see it, and then I guess it is what it is. But COVID slammed us.
Yeah.
So I mean, we refunded, naturally refunded all the money on the ticket sales and everything else. But yeah, COVID slammed it. But I mean, it'll come back, I hope.
Whose idea was it? These live?
That actually goes to Livingston Parish Literacy and Technology Center. They Kelly Jennings and Kim Alvin, who's the principal. Kelly Jennings asked me to come speak to her criminal justice students, and that's when I went. And the Advocate came and ran the article, and it got picked up on the AP Wire that about the cult following.
Yeah.
And she was like, "You ever thought about doing a live?" And I was like, "No, not really." And she's like, "We'll host it here for you for free." So the Livingston Parish Literacy and Technology Center, it's like 100, I think it's 150 or 160, whatever, their concert hall. And I said, let's try it. We sold out within less than an hour when they went online. And I was like, that was for that Saturday night. And I called her. I said, you think we can get another night? She said, yeah, Friday night. Put it on Friday night, sold that one out in less than an hour. And I said, you think we can get Thursday night? She said, yeah. And the Thursday night, it was a LSU Georgia game, and it took us less than a day to sell that one out. So we did 3 shows back to back to back there, and then we've morphed that into the one that you went to.
Yeah.
Which was,
It was probably one of the best ideas I've seen in the podcast genre.
Right. And then having the music. Now, the 3 we did at Livingston Parish Literacy and Technology Center, which those are the best people in the world, man. That criminal justice program Kelly Jennings has going on. I wish I'd had a teacher like that in school. But they hosted us, but there was no alcohol or anything like that. When the Crew Bash was advertised, it was everything. Like, this was going to be an adult story. I couldn't tell an adult. I mean, I told a murder story at the to the crowds, and Walker is where those 3 lives were, and but the one in Baton Rouge. I mean,
that was a party.
It was going to be an adult.
Look, and it was perfect setting for that, and everybody had a good time. The the great thing about it is there was no fights, there was no craziness. It was everybody having fun. Y'all took tons of time to visit with fans after pictures.
I never got to hear or see Toby and then play. I mean, I was upstairs 4 hours doing pictures and autographs. The line down the, you saw the line all the way down the stairs for people. I can't believe people did it. It still blows my mind. Like when we did Lives in Walker, we had people coming in from Florida, Tennessee, Michigan. I'm not talking about people that came, lifers, that because we advertised it, that came in from all over the country to hear me speak.
Sure.
And it's crazy. I'm just blessed. I love them all.
Very, very blessed. And it's funny you talk about that line. I was at the bar. My wife says, I'm going to go take a picture with them. And I said, okay, I'm going to chill out right here and go ahead and do that. And by the time she got back, I think I was inebriated.
Yeah, I know, right?
It was like 2 hours later, I'm like, God dang.
At one point, when I was up there taking pictures, one of the people out helping out tried, I wanted another beer, and they brought me a water in my thing, like, with a little bit of beer mixed in. I said, what the hell? I mean, I'm not that drunk.
Yeah, we're cutting you off.
But it was the same way at the live shows in Walker. I stayed and signed and took a picture with every single person who was there. You know why? Because I felt honored, man. These people would come to see me and do it. And then the person, of course, in future live shows, it's a learning experience. The person I was taking the picture was trying to rush people through. I'm like, hey, every single person I stop and say, where are you from? What's your name? Because a lot of the names I'll see, remember from the crew page, stuff like that. And then they might have drove in from New York or flew in from New York to see it. And I'm like, I'm gonna take a minute and talk to them. And the girl comes up and says, trying to pull the fan away. I'm like, oh no, stop! I want to talk to them. Right. And that's awesome. But really do love them. It wouldn't be a show without them. I still don't get it. I really don't get it.
You lived it.
The whole thing. The whole success of the deal. It's surreal.
It's a credit to what you do, and so we're gonna, with your podcast, you discuss some cases that some people have some good interest in. COVID has slowed the progress a little bit on the Courtney Coco case.
And Miss Barbara Blum.
Yeah. And I know you've said it a million times on Facebook and your podcast. But for people who maybe are fans of mine and not yours, I don't think that exists. But if there's one out there, do you foresee justice for Court?
It is absolutely. I can't say in the Courtney Coco series. First of all, you didn't even get to know what I knew, right? Because I didn't want to hurt the investigation, all the real facts of the case. But people get to hear the family's pain, and then the retired detective crying. I drove to Texas, Detective Rabelais and all that. Mm-hmm. So I put the story together, turned it over. First success was it went from a frozen case to the number one hot case in 3 weeks. In the 6 weeks, I turned it over. But long story short, I know, and I can't say how I know, but I know for a fact the arrests are going to be made. Or I know for a fact it's being taken to the grand jury. COVID is stopping the meetings that are playing, and I can't say anymore because I didn't give away my source. But it's going to be a fine day, and I would like to think that it's happening as we speak. I don't have any reason to believe that's not, and I'm just waiting.
And for the listeners out there, I mean, that's huge because this case was as cold as ice.
Yeah, well, it was even worse than that. I have the mama recording the detective on the phone saying they're actually working the case, and the detectives telling the family members and other people in the community that it was an accidental overdose. But they're still lying to the mama saying they're working as a homicide. Yeah. I mean, we busted them.
Well, thank God that
they have no love for Woody Overton.
No love. I bet they don't. That's all right.
Not law enforcement.
That's all right. In the end, things will work out, and that's what matters. Now, you're working with Jason Ard in the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office on the Barbara Blunt case, I happen to think a lot of Jason Ard. His experience in law enforcement to me is amazing. This is a man that was a cadet for the Denham Springs Police Department at 15 years old. I mean, that's, you know, talk about someone who always knew what he wanted to do for a living. So I know you've spoken very complimentary on your show several times. And so I only bring that up that I hope the people in Livingston Parish realize how fortunate they are to have someone like Jason.
I don't think that they do, especially, you're always going to have haters when you arrest people and stuff like that and everything else. And then the Denny Perkins thing and all that. But here's the deal. Jason Ard's a good dude, man. I came to Livingston. I didn't know anybody. I built my career doing my job, right? And then I got on the SRT team. Jason founded the SWAT team, basically. Jason founded that team, and I didn't know him, but then we became fast friends, and we were peas in a pod. And until I went to the state police, and we parted ways. But he is a consummate law enforcement professional, and he cares, man. He cares. I'm talking about, we're working on Barbara Blunt's case, and before COVID, in 2:30 in the morning, he's sending me a text. He's up reading file himself, going back through it, right? I mean, he cares. Yeah. There was never a major case when I was there, and he had made chief of operations before I left to go to state police, that he didn't come out on himself. Right. Not because to be a looky-loo, but because, I mean, he's a really good delegator of authority. He didn't say, hey, what he did you do this? He let his people do their thing, right? Sure. Willie was excellent about that. Yeah. Put people in the right position and let them run. Sure. And so on that Barbara Blunt case, how difficult is that from an evidentiary perspective? What a horrible case, man. But the difference between Barbara Blunt and Courtney Coco's was butchered by law enforcement, and all that'll come out, and when it can come out. Sure. And other than what I've already said on air, Miss Barbara Blunt's case is like, it was a perfect storm against law enforcement. Everything that happened in that case was so, there's nothing that they could have done at the time different. But everything from the bad rains to everything was just so bad against them from an evidence and an investigative standpoint. Right. Now, being able to go back all these years later, and that happened like 6 months after I left the sheriff's office, and I've been being selfish. I remember watching news thinking, I'm glad that one wasn't mine, because I didn't have any that I didn't solve, right? And that would have haunted me. But going back and looking at it now, and being able to come up with fresh angles, but once again, using the podcast, we got leads that were never known. Right. And the lifers, same thing like Courtney Coco. That crowdsourcing technique, I'm telling you, it's going to be the way of the future when it comes to law enforcement on cold cases. Using the fans to solve the cases. Yeah. People in Livingston Parish putting themselves, just like in Rapides, lifers putting themselves out there, telling me stuff they're not going to tell the cops. Right. Because one reason is they know there's still a murderer out there. Yeah. Right. But they're giving me information on the anonymous side that now I can work with. Now, Jason assigned a whole slew of detectives to it, and I know that they meet on it twice a week. I'm talking about fresh blood, new stuff. Not saying that the guys I used to work with did anything wrong, because they didn't. They did an absolute jam up. There's nothing I would have done different at that time. Yeah. But now, using the tips from the lifers and the stuff, we have a new thing to look at. Yeah. And I can't go into more than that. But then when COVID hits, he's got to allocate his resources from everything from fighting COVID in the jail to it's just so much stuff. I mean, it just shut everything down. But guess what? Statute limitations on murder doesn't run out. That's right. And I want justice for Miss Barbara, and we're going to get justice for Courtney. Very good. And that'll be a proud day. So if you need to catch up on those episodes, you can go back on all Woody's
social media there, and you can listen to them and really catch up on them. There's some interesting cases. Let's talk about your giving back a little bit. You're a good guy outside of podcasting, Woody Overton. You're involved with the LOPA, which is the Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency. And I've heard kudos to you, and obviously it works, because I was kind of opened my eyes up. Yeah, it opened my eyes up to organ donation after hearing you talk about it. My wife is an organ donor. Back in the day when I was younger, I'm like, that's weird. I'm not, I want to be in one people. Well, right. You never know. And it freaked me out. But after listening to your podcast, that's something that I'm personally going to look into doing. So tell us a little bit about LOPA, what it means.
I got introduced to them. I had a homicide in the private sector where a young girl got killed. But they were able to keep her on life support, and she was an organ donor, and I think she saved 5 lives, and one of them was a doctor out of California. I think got her heart or something. But anyway, but LOPA, Lori Steele, who's with the Sheriff's Office and is affiliated with LOPA, was at the lives. I was telling you about Livingston Parish Literacy and Technology Center.
Yeah.
And I saw their stuff. And then she asked me to be on her podcast. LOPA has her own podcast, right? They call it The Gifted Life. And I went and sat in Covington in their studio, and the mama, there's a 5-month-old baby that got killed. It ought to be released sometime this month. When it's released, I'll blow it up everywhere. But the mama called in and told the story of how the baby got killed, and how she made the decision to make the baby is still in life support rights. They have a real strict time when they can get the organs to give it to transplants, right? And it's not like it can't be weeks later and stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the mama's there and has to make the decision and to give our baby's organs. Now, you wouldn't think a baby's organs could help anybody. 4 lives that baby saved. And 4 lives, 4 people that are alive today. But I'm going to tell you something, I'm an old hard ass. And I've seen the worst of the worst and everything. But I listen to that mama's story and I'm going to start crying. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna make this my cause. And I will never do another podcast or live or anything where I do not mention LOPA, Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency. It's nonprofit. You can go. I'm so horrible with websites and all that, but the LOPA.org or whatever. They've actually added real life, real crime as how did you hear about this thing on their website now? And but Livingston Parish Literacy and Technology Center, Kelly Jennings' class was trying to get X amount of people to sign up before the end of the school year. And I said, well, you know what? That's how I first got started. I said, well, put it on podcast. But then the gift of life, when I went in and did their podcast and listened to Mama's story, I was like, oh shit, gotta do something, man. Yeah, there are real people out there dying that are in need of these organs. And it's not just because you sign up to be an organ donor, it doesn't mean they're going to take your organs.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's only a certain select people that die under certain circumstances that they can be used.
Yeah.
But it's powerful, man. Yeah, that's the gift of life. You want to be a hero, save a life. But I said, you're not going to be using it. I mean, your body still goes in the ground.
Yeah, that's right. And it's important that you get that message out because someone like me, I had forgot about this over the last, you used to go on the back of your license. I don't know if you can still do that, but you just write in, I'm going to donate my ear or whatever it is, or your liver. Why I chose ear, but anyway, your liver, your kidney. So now I'm sure there's a little more of a process involved in that. But please, all you listeners, reach out to LOPA and get more information on. This is something that I'm doing because of you. So. And your promotion of this nonprofit.
want to be a hero, you want to save somebody's life, do that. And on the slim chance that you actually get selected, you actually, I mean, for there's so many people out there that are hooked up on machines. Another one of our lifers, and I'll never say her name. I got contacted. She was in North Carolina at Duke or wherever it is. She had a double lung transplant. This was before I got involved with LOPA at the lives. And family members said, "Hey, this young lady she's having a hard time. I might not make it, etc." She's from Livingston Parish. Yeah. And her family couldn't be out there with her. Her mom was out there with her through the whole surgery and the process. Long story short, they said, you think maybe you could reach out to her, send her a message, something she would get a big kick out. Hell, I got her phone number and called her. And we talked when she's in the hospital. We talked for an hour or whatever on the phone. But she received double lungs from somebody. I mean, and she's alive to this day because of it, because somebody donated the organs.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Huge. I mean, saving a life through that act. You're right. I mean, you're a hero. And so during all of my podcasts that I do, I like to ask like a totally unrelated question, something not related to anything. In your case, it's sort of related because you're an investigator. So the Kennedy assassination. Okay. Do you think that Oswald acted alone, or was there more than one shooter?
It's so funny, Jim, that because I'm such a history buff, right? Yeah. And I told you, in my private career, I traveled back and forth between Dallas all the time. I took my wife and kids down to the Dealey Plaza and all that. I've seen every movie or every documentary. I've read every book on it, etc. And there's no way in hell. I bought the same rifle that Oswald used, and I have it in my house now. And I've actually fired it to try to do it. There's no way in hell that he did it by himself.
So there's definitely, I agree. I concur. What's your thoughts, Q, on that?
I'm telling you, I think it was probably, the mafia lost all the casinos, et cetera, in Cuba, and all that. It was a perfect storm of things, whatever it may be. I have some personal history, family history. My mom's uncle was a registrar of voters in Jackson, Louisiana, and Lee Harvey Oswald actually tried to register to vote there. Wow. And right before the year before the assassination, 62 or 61, whatever it was, and he turned them down. But that's in one of the books. But no, absolutely no way in hell the guy that.
I agree 100%. I think Oswald was exactly what he said.
It's like the worst, right? Yeah, he was a ball. I think they set him up. But it's an Italian-made. People think it's a Russian-made rifle, but it's not. It's an Italian-made rifle, and it's the worst. It's got to be the shittiest rifle in the entire world. There's no way. And then the magic bullet and all that.
Yeah, pristine. When Connolly's the one they found on his gurney, and it was like it never. You've hunted your whole life. I mean, when you fire a bullet and it hits bone, it totally deforms itself. This bullet looked like it had barely been touched. And so I agree with you on that. So Woody, how can people find the Real Life, Real Crime podcast?
I guess you can Google Woody Overton, but it's www.realliferealcrime.com, or we're on all. I'm at on Insta, which is a new thing for me, which I'm enjoying. Insta is at Real Life Real Crime or at Overton Woody. We must have like 6 or 7 Facebook pages.
You can pretty much Google it on YouTube or YouTube it, or we're everywhere.
Anywhere you can listen to a podcast, we're on it.
Yeah, just hit Real Life Real Crime. It'll pull it up. And also want to mention you are the 2019
I forgot.
People's Choice Podcast winner.
That's crazy, right? 5 months. We were 5 months old at the time. We were nominated in 3 categories, made the finals in 2, and won it. But it's
that's awesome.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't our fans that voted on it. I mean, we got nominated, but the final vote was 2,000 people of this, the podcast committee selected, and independent of each other, and they gave them the categories to listen to. So it wasn't even lifers. They gave us the final award. So it was for drama and storytelling.
Yeah. And so I think the voting might be still open for this year. So
I don't even, I hadn't even checked, to be honest with you.
Yeah, if you can, there's a link on Facebook. So go to that, and if you enjoy real life, real crime, hit that fan voting button. I believe it's through Podcast Magazine, and vote for these good folks over here. I'm gonna link all your stuff to this video as well.
The Podcast Magazine is actually a separate thing. That 2019 Podcast of the Year award is like the Emmys for podcasts.
Oh, gotcha.
The Podcast Magazine, we were number one, and then they published that in Forbes magazine, because Podcast Magazine just came out. The number one as the number one hottest out of all genres podcasts in the world. And with their first edition, we were number one. The second edition, we were like number 3. The third edition, we were like number 32 or something, because the Podcast Magazine has now become so popular. All the big shows are doing whatever. So I forgot about that. That was another blessing too. Yeah.
Now you outside of the United States, what's the biggest country?
Australia.
I knew it.
Australia.
I knew it.
They love us in Australia. We were going to Australia. We were supposed to go to Australia. They were a penal colony,
yes,
right?
That's right.
And they love the cursing and the whatever Woodyisms or whatever. But we were supposed to go to Australia in October. The 4-city tour.
Oh, they love you over there, man.
I have 3 of my Dream Team moderators are from Australia.
Really?
A lot of my moderators from around the world, Canada, Australia, and different places. But we're in 127 countries.
127.
I didn't know they had that many countries.
Yeah.
I'll go read the list. I don't even have them more.
I couldn't name them, that's for sure. Not all those. Thank you for doing this podcast, man.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate it. I have a parting gift for you, which is that cup you see right there. I'm going to kind of hold this up, though, so we can show the camera, because our buddies at SportNCenter made it.
That's right.
And they support me in my podcast in a lot of ways. They do that in-house at SportNCenter. They have a laser machine that does it. So they can...
I'm going to make...
There you go. I love it. I would also like to thank the king of all media himself.
He's been good to me.
Yeah. He's not Howard Stern. He's McHugh David, though, for engineering this podcast. The Livingston Parish News for the space. All you viewers and listeners, for your support. Please follow me on Instagram, like me on Facebook, subscribe to me on YouTube, and check out the website at paintpodcast.com. It sure helps me out. I want to remind you to love your community, support local business, and keep leading.
Appreciate it.
And I've always wanted to say this. Don't let Woody catch you on Murder by You.
Peace.
Peace out. See you next time.
Thanks, Jim. You're awesome.